Indian foreign policy for that matter. And also, sir, you don't take it personally. It's run by men and especially old men. So whenever we see, the youngsters taking charge is when I feel very happy, and I personally want to, congratulate you for that.
So you had a very interesting. You are from the external affairs, so just wanted to add one aspect. Because you're using it for your personal uses, right? So your data is open, sir. What I would like to just caution you is that the free versions of all of these tools, right? And you will now see more free versions coming into the market, right? They're free because of one clause, which is to use your data. Since it's very sensitive for that matter. When you look at some of the paid versions which are there, although because right now we are at a stage when that's one of the only options sort of which is there, right? So when you look at some of the paid premium models which are there, they have a concept of localized model where your data doesn't go beyond your own control. So that's where maybe you can be much more open to conversing. Do we want to head towards being the largest AI users of the world, or do we want to head towards being the largest AI builders of the world? The choices are
Very interesting scenario. How many of you have used any food delivery app in last couple of weeks? Right, all of us.
You should have asked last half an hour.
Yeah, last
It's
half an
that
hour.
prevalent.
So we end up ordering food, and how many of you have faced any issue with maybe the delivery being not done on time, or food spillage or something or the other, right? And then you end up connecting to a AI chatbot. You have to click few pictures of what happened, explain the whole scenario. Sometimes it's a utter frustration. You want to speak to a human. You want to have that empathy, right? But you see that a lot of startups, a lot of big tech players, a lot of e-commerce service delivery applications have now started to use AI with or without our consent. Those things are in process. And the hope is they would become much more better in time.
It's the number of satellites we have. So something like a 6G requires a very advanced satellite capabilities, and we realize that while our good neighbor China has about more than 1,000 satellites in the LEO, we have very few. I mean, in fact, it was only after Operation Sindoor that we said that, all right, let's launch at least 50. Now, when you talk about these things, why I'm giving this example is because I want to understand from both of you. I'll go to Achyut first. Is that when you talk about AI and its development, by its sheer nature, it's also cross-cutting among developing other capabilities and technologies. So if I were to ask you that, fine, we are here now, we are ready for the AI summit in 2026, the government and its priorities are clear, their frameworks are in place. What would be the top 5 or top 6? You can give as many as you want. Critical technologies that we need to work on in order to get our AI game in place.
We are developing a robust framework as well as a platform which would be able to audit some of these AI algorithms for specific use cases. So as a citizen, you would know that if I'm using ChatGPT, these are the kind of risks I would face. If I'm using Gemini model, this, these are the kind of risks I would face. And even if for sovereign models like for Sarvam, you would have similar reports issued.
Pleased to welcome you to the second panel of today's fireside chat. And the second panel is titled Building an Open and Accessible AI Ecosystem. For this, again, just like we have for the first one, we have two distinguished speakers. To my right, let me start from Achyut. Achyut is the lead at the Government Tech Strategy and Open Innovation at HCL Software. So, of course, we would have many questions for him because before he came, we were discussing, the big tech and funding and stuff like that. And then next to Achyut is Gaurav Godhwani, who's the co-founder and executive director at Civic Data Lab. It's a research lab where they harness data, tech, design, and social science to strengthen data for public good and enhance civic engagements. And they've been in the business for more than a decade. So very pleased to welcome both of you, Achyut and Gaurav. Gaurav has been with us in the first panel too, as an audience. And of course, we were just talking before we began that he has a good sense of what we discussed. But anyway, let me just first come to Achyut. Achyut, in the first one, we were discussing a lot of things that we would be perhaps diving deeper into in this panel. But let me just begin with you and understand from you, the major thing, which is that how do we, let's just start with a big question with, on what the panel is all about. How do we build these institutional frameworks?
So thank you, Swasti, and thank you for having me. And I was also part of the audience a little briefly, just watching, the
Okay.
good discussions happen. And first of all, I think kudos to the young organizing team, because that's what uh, I'm really impressed with. I spoke to Anmol and some of the team members over there, right? So so good to see that. So congratulations to you for having all of this there. Um, but yeah, I mean, my question essentially is, and I keep talking about it, is we want to head towards being the largest AI users of the world, or do we want to head towards being the largest AI builders of the world? The choice is ours, because 1.5 billion touch points, 1.4 billion Aadhaar enrollments, close to 500 million DigiLocker signups, and so that's AI and or any technology, right, is fueled as long as you have the intricacies of the data, which is what you get from a population like us, right? So it's our choice whether you want to be the users for it, or you really want to build that across. So that's I would say, right, along with being the use case capital, I think we should also start building AI from the country, right? Something which is in a more concrete word called as sovereign, right? We should be controlling at least what is applicable here in the country versus what we should share along with some of our partner countries like the global south, or some of our free trade agreement countries that we are increasingly having. So that would be, a summary of how we, can look at. And you spoke about frameworks, right? I think a lot of them are already in place. We don't need to invent, most of them. You look at the foundations, which is something which we are developing in the country, which is semiconductors. So you have the India Semiconductor Mission, which is live. It is developing, and that's good, right? For a country as young as us, a developing story is a good story. Um, One very good point that was made was that a country innovates, the other country regulates, right? I think and just to add to that, right? I mean, we have to decide whether we would be the ones who will execute them, operationalize it, or we would be the ones who will actually, govern it. So that would be our choice, right? So you have all these missions that are there. You have data sets, you have technology in place, right? Now, what's needed is connecting those together. What's needed is really making it good sense. So that sort of a holistic engagement is needed, because there are 90% of even in the government, as we see, or the public sector, there are a lot of similar applications which are being replicated. So connecting all of them together, and having those ecosystems to function would be the next wave for the AI use case.
Right. And before I come to Gaurav, I mean, I'd just like to have your views, because if you were there, then we did discuss this stack system of the DPI. So do we need something like the public digital infrastructure for AI, the way we created the India stack for payments and identity? I mean, how do you? I remember, I mean, Ayushi had referred to that. But what, in your view, do you think this could be an interesting way to look at it? And if so, then how?
You see, I think we have the stack. It's there are close to 30 to 35 plus digital public infrastructures which are live now. Uh, and let me take a nuance from there. Any type of technology is as good as how simple and easy it is for us to use. Let's take GPS for example. Very simple. It was originally built for military grade applications, right? Now without GPS, even all of us were not here in this room, right? So in fact, I also ended up being in the other building, and then I don't know how many of it happened with of that happened with you also, right? So, but yeah, so technology being as simple as how it can be integrated, that's where even this technology or any of those, right, will eventually move towards that. So those elements or those layers are, I think, there, right? Having a framework to connect them together and ready to operationalize is what is key, because we have the data which is readily available. Key problems which could be land, agriculture, climate, all of those variations are all available here in the country, and that is why a lot of global companies are, I would say, coming to India for those. And we spoke about that 1 year free subscription, right? That's going on.
ChatGPT Pro.
Everything happens for a reason. There's nothing free which is there. So yeah, so that's where it is. I think those layers are already there. The missions are also there. The more operationalizing, the more usage is what is needed.
Right. Gaurav, if of course, I want to ask you more about how do we make this entire ecosystem more transparent and inclusive? Because what I also realized from a lot of questions that were asked in the first panel, sort of somewhere hinged on this very core conflict, which is that it empowers you, but perhaps it comes at a cost of your privacy. And the regulation around it is also, anybody who has been a victim of, let's say, a cyber crime knows that it looks good on paper, but when you start getting into the nitty-gritty of really getting to justice, you realize that things are much easier said than done, and then something else would come up. Anyway, so the basic question and the basic conflict of how do we make it more transparent, how do we make it more inclusive? Of course, this sounds very good on paper, but your views on that. And then also feel free to add to what Achal just said.
Thanks a lot, GeoStrata and Swasti, for having me here. I'm Gaurav Gudwani. I'm Executive Director and co-founder of Civic Data Lab. What we do is strengthen data and AI for public good in India and a couple of other countries in Asia Pacific. Really interesting conversations in the first panel and as well as in this one. How do we make frameworks work if you have to aspire to have India as a use case capital? What we need is the enabling environment. We need those building blocks in place, which converts this framework into reality. And India is not just a uniform land, right? We have such diversity among all the regions of the country. We face different issues geographically. We face different priorities culturally. How do we make some of these framework actually a reality? It's a journey, and that requires a lot of building blocks in place. There are some really great progresses which we discussed in the previous panel as well. Like there is huge investment which the India AI mission has taken up, trying to see what kind of access to data, access to compute, access to skilling, access to startups the government of India can provide. At the same time, there are certain challenges which we face. If you ask any of the AI models at the moment, what is the GDP of my district? I come from Indore. So if I ask any LLM model at this point, what is the GDP of my district? Give me a time series information of last 5 years, how my district has been doing. Give me an information like what are the roadblocks on it. Most of the models fail. Most of the models would hint there is a lack of information out there where we can really trust. And these are the kind of questions I see the young generation would be asking these LLM models. These are the kind of queries they might have. The inquisitive nature of our youth might try to, argue with some of these models. How is it helping my case? How is it helping to get me a job? How is it helping me to solve for, say, climatic conditions in my district? What are the welfare programs and schemes being done for my demography? That's where we see some of these models, some of these structures not working in reality. And the hope is in 10 years we would solve for this. Now, how do we accelerate that progress? How do we ensure we have local, inclusive data systems which talk about these priorities? Not just coming from the government, but also from other sectors. How do we incentivize civil societies to contribute to this? How do we incentivize the research institutions? India is a land of a lot of research happening. Although our R&D budget is not up to the mark, but we have huge amount of universities and colleges where a lot of research is happening. How do we ensure some of that get translated into these data ecosystems? How do we have the startups and businesses have the right incentives to contribute to this? That's what we have been thinking. We have been thinking what the nature of a data and AI collaborative would look like. And at the same time, how do we make it transparent, fair, free from biases, make it work for some of the issues which we all face, don't have the information gaps, solve for the privacy issues, solve for things like hallucinations, etc., which we all aware the models are currently facing, but more and more they would face as we have more next generation of users coming on board. So that's where our thinking has been.
Right. And just to build on all this discussion, and I did ask the previous panel this as well, and they, of course, they enlightened us with their answers. But if I can come to Achyut, what do you think are, because we are discussing about how to make it work, right? I mean, how to operationalize it, and we have these missions, but we have a mission for everything. If you find the number of missions perhaps we have, it would be inconsonant to I would say the general scalability we have generally, okay, which is that we are very good with numbers, okay, so a lot of missions, a lot of plans, how do we make them work. But apart from the core issue that I think we all agree to, which is that we have not as a country systematically invested in R&D, and this has been true for decades. This is not something that we can fix this year or next year or in the next 5 years, but we have to really change the way we think about R&D. That's one, of course, I think everybody would allude to it, but that's also a very generalized understanding. What, in your opinion, and I'm going to come to Gaurav with the same question, what are the systemic barriers, that prevent these government bodies from adopting AI, at least at scale?
So, Chai. Sure. See, we've had a very good startup revolution, no doubt. I think the next stage of us as a country growing would be to also focus on some of the scale ups. When we talk about R&D, right, there is a technology readiness level of any research, any invention that comes across. When it's very early stage in its research, yes, it goes through multiple iterative cycles, and we have a lot of schemes or we have a lot of methodologies in place, right? When we also need to now look at how we as an ecosystem are, and I like the word incentivization, not make it so, I would say, yeah, not make it something which is not less heard of, right? It should be incentivized for everyone in the ecosystem. So let's take a step back and try to understand what it means for larger organizations. When I say larger, companies that have really taken that 0 to 1 step, and they would like to really move forward in terms of scaling their company, right? So and so what is needed is um, basically in this entire ecosystem, whether it's the private sector, whether it's academia, their investment has to really see their their return when it comes to export readiness, which is very much missing. So now one of the trends that is being observed is that a lot of these models or a lot of these solutions as products which are getting created are are contributing to what is called as export readiness for the country. So that is incentivizing a lot of private sector to get and utilize these investments which are done. I'll come back to one of the questions that our Honorable Minister Goelji made during Startup Mahakumbh. Where are we moving or heading? And that, of course, was so viral, right? For the right reasons. Where when we look at a technology as foundational as which needs a lot of investment, right? Are we really looking at those nooks and corners to incentivize them to really take these solutions forward? So that's what's happening. You look at public infrastructures that are created, a lot of private sector is now building on top of it. Those are also use cases, and also exporting it to some of our countries like Africa, Middle East, ASEAN countries as well, and some of the other countries which share pretty much the similar problem. You pick up any problem, if it works in India, it works anywhere in the world, because this is as complex as it can get, right? The nuance which is there. We're not very far from UP, which is just here. I mean, that state in itself is in terms of population, is the fifth largest country in the planet in terms of population. Now, it receives close to 80,000 plus complaints related to land, water, agriculture, and home department in one day. So, and the state is as diverse as, in couple of kilometers, you will also see that, uh, the nuance of those complaints keeps changing. That's what fuels a lot of the technology applications, right? We spoke about AI Kosh in the previous panel, right? Uh, the usability of those data sets, those investments will be when they start to see, when we say they, right, whether it's government officers, whether it's private sector, when they start to see that in terms of objectives which are getting realized in their day-to-day operations, which means that you have 80,000 complaints in one day in one particular state, but the number of government officers will still remain the same. Number of complaints will keep on increasing, officers will still remain the same. So is the solution by increasing the number of people, or is the solution by increasing the number of technology that can help those officers, right? That's when the usability is there. So usability makes it, more useful for everyone in the ecosystem, I would say.
Right. Okay, Gaurav, what would be your thoughts on these systemic barriers that you feel? Because when you look at the funding per se, and I think we did discuss the budgeting here, classically we are sort of always watching closely why investments from big players not really happening in India in the manner in which the GDP is growing. So as a sort of in proportion to our GDP, we still struggle with manufacturing not taking off. And these are generic problems, investments not coming. In fact, in the previous financial year, India earned more from remittances than it did from investments. Although, if you look at this particular quarter, you do see investments growing. So, of course, there are these little changes here and there. But in terms of systemic problems and in terms of, let's say, the budgeting issues, the government has the cumulative investment is quite impressive. And yet, we would like to see more changes. So, in your opinion, the same question, but
Yeah.
building to what Achyut said.
I think precisely to the point what Achyut says, very interesting scenario. How many of you have used any food delivery app in last couple of weeks? Right, all of us.
You should have asked last half an hour.
Yeah, last
It's
half an
that
hour.
prevalent.
So we end up ordering food, and how many of you have faced any issue with maybe the delivery being not done on time, or food spillage or something or the other, right? And then you end up connecting to a AI chatbot. This just you have to click few pictures of what happened, explain the whole scenario. Sometimes it's a utter frustration. You want to speak to a human. You want to have that empathy, right? But you see that a lot of startups, a lot of big tech players, a lot of e-commerce service delivery applications have now started to use AI with or without our consent. Those things are in process. And the hope is they would become much more better in time, and we would have a better access to human when we actually need it. Problem happens when we talk about the government cases, what Achyut was alluding to as well. That most of the subnational governments, local governments, and even at the national government level, you would see a lot of customer care services still managed by people. Now, this is a mundane job. We have all understood, and sometimes we also understand humans might not be the right players to take this forward. We have holidays, we have specific days where our availability is constrained. So, that automation of call centers, automation of some of our mundane work, the conversation is not yet moving there. That's where the gap is. And when we talk about these discussions, we just finished one field visit with one of the subnational government where we work very closely, and we realized that the bureaucrats are really trying to have this conversation that can we use AI for some of these mundane work? Can we help you out? There's a huge pushback among the government officials on why do we need to do this. There's also lack of trust on these AI applications for right reasons, but of course, for some reasons, been coming just from the lack of awareness. So my starting point would be, how do we build the right awareness beyond the younger generation, but also in government administrative services? We also take it to thousands and thousands of officials who are working in this industry. We keep saying 33% of our economy is still run by government procurement system. So whatever government is procuring, be it services, be it the employment they are providing, be it the infrastructure, how do we start enabling awareness about what we can do with AI and what are the opportunities there? Second is, with the younger generation, how do we, especially with the non-tech students, talk about AI? What are the kind of opportunities it's creating for all of us? How do we better use AI in our day-to-day activities? Be more cognizant of what are the kind of pitfalls AI is having, the kind of conversation we were having in the afternoon as well, that be more aware about what kind of data you are feeding into the AI applications, what are the kind of reasons you can activate AI applications for. And the third thing is, beyond the awareness and the capacity building, is to create opportunities with AI. I think still most of the startup ecosystem and the kind of players in the startup system are struggling to find the right support to use AI in a meaningful manner. Sometimes we have to queue up to get the GPU access. Sometimes we have to whitelist some of the AI use cases before we can actually get support from the government. Sometimes we have to have enough money to go beyond the pilots, enough investments to go beyond the graveyards of pilots and do something meaningful on ground. So how do we accelerate all of this is require a massive sort of thinking among the stakeholders, and it needs to be slightly more bottom up rather than top down. That's how it has been so far, right? There would be a new policy coming in, there would be a very small window for all of us to give feedback, and then that policy would become a reality which we would live with, right? There's very less window for us to participate and less window for us to raise our issues. And some of these issues, as Achit was also mentioning, are very local to India and India's nature. What kind of problems you would face here in Delhi would be slightly different from the startup ecosystem which would be facing in Rajasthan or in the northeastern region. So, how do we make some of these local voices come up in a much more strong manner, have more deliberations before we roll out the policy?
No, interesting a bit there because even in the university system, I feel that we should be having more deliberations, even when as we are developing the content for our courses about how this is impacted by AI, not just about the research which is happening, which is niche research, on AI models and SLMs and LLMs, but generally, if you're talking about international politics or geopolitics, then what is the role of AI, and how where things are going? Similarly, it has an application everywhere. If you're doing commerce or you're doing physics, whatever. So I think that mainstreaming is also helpful because usually these conversations are done among very niche audience and then they remain in that door. So I mean, in that room. So yeah, I sort of, just my two bits adding there. But actually, I want to come. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just adding. I mean, and you pick up any technology, right? You mentioned in the university systems as well, right? Pick up any technology today. It's AI. In 1.5 years' time, it will be quantum key encryption, new terminology, right, and all that. But you pick up any. There are just 3 to 4 phases of acceptance of technology. First is you will see a lot of denial.
Yeah.
Everybody denies that it so and so is not needed, right? Second is they will all try to, I mean, stakeholders try to whitewash a lot of it. So in today's day, 90% of proof of concepts actually have failed. So the real success is to go to the pile to really scale it across, right?
Yeah.
So you see AI in everything. The other day in some event, AI based food, AI based this and that, right? So that's that. It's called a technology washing phase that sort of happens, right? What happened with sustainability a couple of months back, right? And then when you start to realize it, you see those smaller incremental values, right? Very small incremental values that today if I spend 8 hours a day in looking at quality, let's take university for an example, right? There's a lot of paperwork that also is there, right? can it reduce it even by 20%, right?
True.
And I can use that 20% to maybe have another discussion with the panel of students, right?
Yeah.
On what should be done. That is when you will start to appreciate, the user starts to appreciate and then tries to see what else can I do, right? So yeah, these 3 to 4 stages in any technology happens.
No, that's very important, and that's why we need to mainstream these discussions. And the audiences here are not necessarily trained in AI, but they are full of fresh ideas and fresh energy. And it's important to have this interface as we go along. But Achut, I'm going to come to you because that's how I had planned my next, question for. So when we're looking at this, and in the first panel, we did discuss a lot about, for example, this famous thing about the US innovates and China replicates, Europe regulates, and India perhaps complicates, and we are not trying to do that now. Anyway, but in this larger scheme of things, you do see that US has a particular model of having that innovation. China has a different kind of model. Europe has a governance-oriented model, regulation-oriented model. Let's talk about positioning India. In this larger global conversation on AI. Um, what part of it, and I want to really fine tune it because everybody understands that we have to really put ourselves in the bigger scheme of things about where technology is going, etc., what is happening now, what value can we add later. But right in terms of the partnerships that we have, right? I mean, what is it that we can have a more meaningful conversation with our partners? Could you give us, more examples on, this is something that perhaps the US can help us, or this is something with Taiwan or Japan or South Korea, whatever that may be. I'm just throwing, words to you, countries to you. And then also in terms of export, because you did mention that we are doing the same with some African countries and we are doing the same with some ASEAN countries as well. But let's try to position it better. India in this global AI ecosystem, how is India positioning itself in terms of learning, developing, getting talent, sending talent, and then exporting as a commodity? Yeah.
Yeah. No, very interesting question. US innovates will actually, I mean, 5 years down the line, there are only three economies, that will really matter, which is US, India, and China. But the next question is between China and India, it's a huge gap, very huge gap, right? Which is there. So we can be happy about it, but the fact is that when we say someone innovates, we are still the ones who will adopt. So we are always the adopters. Let's take 5G as an example. A technology we're using, but the standards, the policies of 5G in our mobile phone is not Indian. On the other side, India is the largest 5G user, of course, right? Why not? So now we're starting to move towards discussions when 6G is getting implemented or even thought of, right? That we have to get to the point where when these standards, when these definitions are being constructed, that's when India has to be at the seat of the table. So, I mean, this is my view, but I think it's a multipolar world. It's not that just a couple of countries control what the entire world has to really offer or really has to use. Those days are, I think, gone, right? And this is a World Economic Forum conversation which will happen in January, which talks about building trust between each other, right? One of the successful cooperation models that are coming across, whether you pick up any technology, is that now we have at least realized ourselves. See, working on R&D, etc., is another journey altogether. So the ANRF funds and all of those, they have their own journey path. But on the other side, right, because R&D for us is a work in progress, needs a lot of work to do still. We're not there yet, but we're still, now we have now realized how can we influence certain key centers in the world, because a lot of similar problems we share, and the other regions of the world also are underrepresented when it comes to even asking or even solving problems. Same south conversation, and when we talk about global south, right, that's in terms of population size, that's about 60% of the planet. So that's where we're heading, actually, and increasingly what we will see is a lot of bilaterals happening. This is the way forward. I think the WTO practically in the current scenario doesn't exist anymore. And what will really face the or see the world narrative is these growing bilaterals and growing FTAs. There is no single country in the world that doesn't want an FTA with our country, and that is something that we should realize, that we should not just be the adopters and really start to see, how we can really see a more of a close cooperation when it comes to sovereign infrastructure.
Right. Gaurav, what would be your thoughts on the same, which is that where is it that we can sort of, join hands with? What is it that we can offer? How do you see India's positioning in the global AI ecosystem?
Right. If you look in last 3 decades, the technology evolution which has happened, be it from the use of say search engines, we were, or even if we go back on the operating systems, we were quite dependent on certain big tech players to offer us operating system in schools. We made huge deals with them, give them a lot of our users, our resources to offer us computing systems back then. Same happened with search engine. We became dependent on certain big tech players to find information, the kind of information we need. Same happened with 4G and now 5G, and same is happening with mobile phones. Now the pattern continues with AI as well. There's a constant dominance of foreign technology, and that foreign technology keep finding avenues with free 1 year subscription, with free incentives to onboard as many users as possible from countries like us, and we end up providing at the max a sort of a support system to them. uh, and our only offer has been the talent and the users. I think we need to change that equation.
Okay.
We are now in a position to change that equation, that we are no longer going to be just offering our talent, our skills, our support system. We want to offer innovation. We want to offer diversity. We need to offer and incentivize clear outputs from these relationships. And that requires a more bilateral, multilateral thinking.
Okay.
Clearly, the WTO conversations are not helping us. We are not getting a seat on the table to discuss the standards, seat on the table and discuss the cybersecurity issues. But we need to ask, saying that if those scenarios are not working with us, we have to somehow restrict the usage of certain technologies and enable more incentive structure here for the domestic usage for those technologies. And EU has done that. EU has done that with their laws, where their data privacy laws, and with AI Act. Maybe some creative thinking is required in terms of shaping the legislation to ensure we just don't end up giving the population as a user base, but also incentivize more scenarios here. Coming back to the question of what we can offer, I think thinking it really hard, we do have the talent, we do have the skills in place. We're not able to provide solutions which are going from just the alpha stage or just the pilot stage to actually working for our own population. So it requires a different kind of incentivization for our startups. It requires different thinking of how do we run the incubation labs, the innovation labs, which the country traditionally has been doing. Definitely R&D budget and those factors are there, and as Achyut was mentioning, with ANF and a couple of other frameworks, we're trying to innovate with that. But some of it is still not percolating to the local states, the local districts. Have a relook on how some of this can be on a bottom-up approach, and do in more collaboration space. So just to give a concrete example there, now we are hearing news where Germany and France are working together to create a sovereign model where Mistral, of course, as well as the German AI model are getting a joint investment from the EU Commission to make it work, trying to create like an Airbus model for fighting the Boeings of the world. So those kind of bilateral, multilateral partnerships might be beneficial for India, especially with the Global South partners, to ensure that our population doesn't being taken up as just a user base.
Right. Just to be the devil's advocate here, and this is, of course, a question I'd like to understand from both of you, because I saw that 6G is being referred to again and again. And when you get into the details, I mean, I was just recently in Poland where they were talking about how to develop more capabilities and resilience for protection of critical infrastructure. And then they were talking about all these navigation systems. So, one critical thing that stood out, and of course, correct me if I'm wrong, but it took us at Operation Sindoor to realize that one of the things that is going to determine our readiness, whether it's communication, defense, or whatever, or AI and its application, is the number of satellites we have. So something like a 6G requires a very advanced satellite capabilities, and we realize that while our good neighbor China has about more than 1,000 satellites in the LEO, we have very few. I mean, in fact, it was only after Operation Sindoor that we said that, all right, let's launch at least 50. Now, when you talk about these things, why I'm giving this example is because I want to understand from both of you. I'll go to Achyut first. Is that when you talk about AI and its development, by its sheer nature, it's also cross cutting among developing other capabilities and technologies. So if I were to ask you that, fine, we are here now, we are ready for us, I mean, for the AI summit in 2026, the government and its priorities are clear, their frameworks are in place. What would be the top five or top six? It's, you can give as many as you want, critical technologies that we need to work on in order to get our AI game in place. Because AI is not just AI is getting affected by so many of these other parallel developments. So, how do you see it? And also feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I do see that there is a critical link in how we have to develop other capabilities. So, Achit, you first, and the same question to Gaurav.
Yeah, that's sure. So, no, I really liked what Gaurav mentioned, right? When we say what do we have to offer us, why is it always people? Right? To why isn't IPs? Why isn't it products? Right? When you look at the world, I think it's called WIPO. That's the premier IP organization of the world. Where are we? We are, very much on the lower side, right? You pick up any critical, I would say this is a little technical, but it's called a stack. So pick up any you break down any solution, you will notice that the core components don't reside in the country. So you end up being the user only, right? To your point, again, and that is actually quite unfortunate, right? See, no technology can work in silos. That, yeah, no we are in, and we will always continue to be in an age where there will always be convergence. So that exactly is a trend, which is convergence. Now, if mobile and digital applications brought us the digital public infrastructure, which is our UPI and DigiYatra, right? Um, then AI can only function because the foundation was already there. That was stage one. So we've made digitization possible, right? From manual records to basically at least having a digital front and all those alphanumeric inputs in place. That's when you can work on further technologies, right? Um, in and that's what we'll see in the coming few years is when if um, three areas where we will definitely have to have an Indianness intact is your foundational semiconductor chip play, which is there. Um, and because we're seeing that we're all noticing that everything runs on your silicon wafer, and a small shortage of that, whether it is due to geopolitics, whether it is due to just one country being embargoed, or so on and so forth, it can half it can actually reduce your car production volumes by half. This is the biggest impact that it can happen. So semiconductor chip we've been doing there. It's not that it's not happening. Those deep technologies, as we say, right, which requires 10 years of building at least in the minimum, right, which requires your private sector to be incentivized and co invest in them for about 10 years along with the government. so that you can have those foundational layers that are there. Semiconductors, chips, where we're doing good work in drones, but you have to see what's inside those drones. Is that still Indian, or it's just the packaging which is the drone, which is Indian? That's very important, because your drone can fly, but your drone can also go down if somebody else is controlling it. So, you know, is it your own operating system? Is it your own, you know, patch management system? One single patch can shut down all airports across the world. It's not a threat. It's not a cyber attack which shut down airports. It was a patch management fault which shut down airports. At the Delhi airport a few weeks back, also very similar things happened, right? These foundational technologies, right? And I, I'm itching to say quantum because it's a cool word, but that will only we will realize that only when we have a big breach that will happen. But we should, really invest in these, I would say, deep technologies, or this, core infrastructure layer. Make it more lucrative for our own ecosystems to create, build in India, and but still make it exportable to the world. That's how it is, a self-sustaining cycle.
So it was fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it.
Same thing what Achyut mentioned, like the thing we are seeing with drone, my worry is we are going to see with AI use cases. That the AI use case wrapper would be made in India, but the AI models would be not domestic. The AI components would not be domestic. So how do we change that? And I know we are not in a position to change it immediately, but we should have a midterm plan. In next 5 years, we should be able to change that. And how much we can change that, that's a conversation we need to have. So for that to have, we have a couple of ideas which we have been proposing to the ecosystem as well. Number one, we need to have more infrastructure investments for AI, where if you are using Indian infrastructure, we need to have much more better access to the AI population here. Second is to enable more data sets from India. And I think a lot of work is going on in AI Coach, a lot of work is going on in Pashini. But how do we make it work for all the districts and below districts as well? I want to see sort of the way we have the SDG, the Sustainable Development Goals monitoring platform for how our districts are performing. Similarly, can we see how our districts are performing in terms of contributing really data sets for public good? That would incentivize our districts to actually create more digital services which they can open up for sovereign use cases. Third one I'm very critical about is the sharing agreements. Currently, the sharing agreements are so weak that we end up being just sidelined by the evolution of technology. How can we have a much more stronger voice in some of these negotiation, and trade deals and other mechanisms could be activated if we have a right sharing agreements in place where we would share our data, we would share our users if these are the kind of benefits which we are getting. I think that requires a bit more of a legal thinking and work in terms of activating these agreements. And lastly, some more uh, thinking about use cases for sovereign needs. I think a lot of use cases end up just polished and customized for Indian needs. I think that requires a different thinking where we need to source what are some of the major problems. For example, we don't get enough AI use cases for some of the agriculture patterns which we face, or some of the health issues which we face. Not enough investment is going on for genomics in India, where our genomic data gets the right kind of use cases for fighting the kind of diseases which we are much more likely to face in next 2 years. So thinking of these kind of use cases and investing more on it might be a good outcome of the AI summit.
Yeah, so that's very helpful, and I'm glad. Both of you, in your own ways, actually came up with very original suggestions on technology and all different kinds of things. And now I think there are many questions, and I kind of realized it from the first panel experience that there are more questions than answers. So let's just open it up for questions. Please feel free to ask questions. I've tried to give you more time this time. Please identify yourself. We'll go one by one, so maybe we can start with the lady here. You asked a very good question in the first panel too. Right.
No pressure.
Oh, hi. I'm a senior banker at Citi, Divya Kaushik. So I just wanted to know your take on Google Gemini and ChatGPT, considering that I am, what should I say, a active user of both. So what I personally realized that Google Gemini doesn't really give out an input that's more useful. It just gives you whatever is there on Google. For example, I tested it like I edited a Wikipedia page and then I went to Google Gemini and it was a false whatever I said on Wikipedia page. So I went to Google Gemini and I asked the same question, and it just simply took the information from there that I have put there, and just replied me with the same, which was incorrect. So similarly, when I use ChatGPT, I could see that it's playing more with the psychology of the users than the maybe technological technical part behind it. Because let's say I put a prompt that today I'm not feeling good, so just say, "Oh, what happened?" And then I'm like, okay, I'm feeling good, then it just gets excited with me. So I just want to understand the model behind it, and is it really something useful, or is it just playing with human psychology to create an illusion that AI is what we need and it is useful, but it's indeed is it isn't. Like we can simply Google something if we need instead of going to Gemini. So that's my question.
So how about taking a couple of questions, right? Will that work? Right. So because this also gives them time to put their thoughts together. So that's Divya's question. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Gunjan, and I'm a research intern at the United Service Institution of India and also a Strata team member. My question to you all is, do you think India's protocol-based digital public infrastructure is actually a cornerstone or fundamental for democratizing AI innovation? And if so, what are the government or regulatory framework that we need to prevent the data concentration?
Good evening, respected panel. I'm Astha. I just want to start my question by pointing out this case that I recently came across. So, this person from Bangalore, he's an engineer, and he bought this new vacuum moppers that have come in the market, those AI ones, right? So, they mop and they broom the house. So, what he did is, being a tech savvy person, he opened the entire mopper and he started reading the algorithms. So, he found one algorithm that was not required over there, and then he took it off. Now that mopper worked for a few days and then it stopped working. So he took it to the mechanic or whatever electrician person, and then the person gave it back, repaired it, gave it back, it worked. He again opened it out of curiosity and saw that the algorithm was still there. He removed it and then it finally stopped working, and then he just got rid of it. Now, with the algorithm was that it was a self-destructive algorithm, because that mopper that he has bought was originally produced and manufactured in China. Now, coming from a family background that loves political discussion, I don't know if my family knew that I was going to attend this conference. Last week only, I was having this discussion where my family was discussing how China is so ahead of India. You know, there is the 21st floor, and from the 21st floor, they can see there's an entire city that they have based there. So, competing with China with such a large gap, like with a country that is so ahead of us, so does these safety issues, these safety concerns, put a threat on already slow progress of India? Like India is already at a very slow progress when it comes to AI and progressing AI, and these threats, these safety threats, does that put a threat on progress?
Region. All right. So these are the first set of three questions. Have you thought of yours? So now we can come to it later because I already asked three. So let's just follow that pattern. Achyut, would you like to come first with all three? And because they did not specify who they want to ask it to, so you can also take a call on what you'd like to answer.
Yeah, so I didn't have a notepad, using the phone only for making, noting down the questions. So the first question was around Gemini versus ChatGPT. How useful is it?
Psychology behind it, like what is it really based on? Because it just fabricates stories, in my opinion. ChatGPT.
Okay.
Gemini just gives whatever is there on Google, then actually stating some facts which might or might not be.
Okay.
I just want to understand.
Yeah, so no, so the one more trend which we will see next year is AI fatigue. I'm telling you,
That's important. Yes.
yeah, the more unique and genuine creations will be 10x more valued than, and you go to social media, there is just so much content on LinkedIn for a small aspect, people, I mean, I've stopped now, there's just too much. I also use it, but now there's just too much content. Coming back to your question, these tools are as good as you prompt them or you type and you start to train them, right? We spoke about these models, these agents that are there, or these bots which are working behind the scenes. They are your custom, I would say. You can think of it as, you're training a child for your, for your usage, right? So the more you train those models, and that training happens only when with the amount of queries you input, the amount of data you also ask it to ingest, and the amount of cross questioning that you do with these tools. There is no one tool or an application or a platform which serves, you missed Perplexity, which is also one other platform which is there, right? So growingly we will be we now see that anyone who joins our organization is given a AI stack as a, full productivity tool, right? So they have to be well versed in close to 12 to 13 plus platforms from the start of the day for a fresher, right? That's how things are changing. So um, uh, to your point, right, whether it's fabrication, that's the hallucination part. It betters itself when you converse with it, cross question, and there are lot. So it's called, the technical term is called prompting. So the more you do that, you will realize that it starts to better in its performance. So what you're looking forward is a good performance in terms of accuracy and quality of outputs which are there. It will start to improve gradually as you converse with it. Yeah. Second was on to the DPI protocol, but what was the question?
It was more like, will that lead to be a fundamental part of democratizing AI innovation?
It is already, yeah. So it is already. See, the best part about digital public infrastructure is, or the protocols, is that it is all open source. There is another terminology which means open source in the sense that there is no no one particular person or no one organization which is controlling the logic behind it. Because the idea of creating public infrastructure was not to control elements like the FASTag, but to control, to ensure that this gets out to all of us, right? Now, but everybody is not in CSR mode, and how will companies really be built, right? That's when you look at private sector companies that build on top of whatever protocols are there. FASTag is a open source protocol, and all of that which was built, made accessible to everyone. But Park Smart is a private company which used FASTag and created a business out of it. And the small pain point why it got accepted was that it reduced the parking times and wait times, which is now, next to negligible. So that's when you may incentivize the private sector to really do it. So yes, protocols are needed, because if the protocols are like the nucleus of everything. So if you follow those DPI open source protocols, it ensures that whatever you are building are three things: interoperable, which means you can deploy it here there, so there is replicability. Second, it is modular, which means that if I were to build a house in blocks which are set pattern, it's much more quicker versus a unique design. Of course, creativity takes a hit over there, right? And the third is another term which is called composable, which means that you can ensure that it can also start to get exported in other countries, because that's what we really want to arrive. So did that answer your question?
Yeah.
First part, yes. Second part is, do you think we need some guidelines?
They're already there.
But for the data consideration,
So
you players
DPDP,
are getting much of the share.
because have you read the DPDP Act, which has been notified just a couple of weeks back? So please do read that, because as GDPR was there, we also have started to have now our own and I would say act which is in place. And to some of your concerns which are there, it is mandating a lot of players in the next 12 to 16 months itself to start to act upon it. So definitely you should give it a read. Yeah. The third, very quickly, was a vacuum cleaner discussion, which was around algorithm, right? So the reason behind it is because that when you, as a company which is selling a vacuum cleaner to you, they will have to price it at a very competitive rate. That pricing only comes when you look at the value chain, what the things that go behind making that, right? Now when you look at the things that go behind making that, the Indian versions of them, if they are a little expensive, that cost gets passed on to the consumer. So the manufacturer looks at the cheapest model which is available, or cheapest option which is available. Most of the times it is Chinese, or it is something outside, or open source, for example, right? Increasingly what government of India is doing is, it's called software bill of materials, SBOM, which India's premier certification agency is, which is called CERT-in. That is India's certification cybersecurity agency. It is deployed that, which means that, because vacuum cleaner is not critical infrastructure for that matter, but if there are any critical infrastructure specific solutions coming in India, they will have to disclose basically the, in simpler terms, SBOM is your, what you see, the nutrients ingredient in your sauce bottle which is there, right? So you will have to disclose that this is what is there, and that will actually give you as a user, that this is where it came from, so you'll then have to make a choice. That's the progress in it.
Gaurav, would you like to add?
Quickly on the vacuum cleaner and the ChatGPT, I see a correlation there. I think both of them have this issue. They are already launched for consumers at large. Our population scale is using it, but we don't have enough technology and AI audits happening. So what Achyut was mentioning, insert in conversation, what we are pushing for is to have mandatory technology and AI audits for this, and that audit report should be disclosed if the ambition is to roll out the population at population scale. And the audit report needs to have it from the perspective of bias and fairness, more from if there is a case of AI, what kind of hallucination it's happening currently, if a new version comes in, how they have mitigated the previous hallucinations which they were facing. And from a privacy ethics perspective, what kind of information it's collecting, what kind of misinformation it might release in some form or the other. That's what the Parak AI work, which we are doing at Civic Data Lab as part of the India AI missions, safe and trusted pillar. We are developing a robust framework as well as a platform which would be able to audit some of these AI algorithms for specific use cases. So as a citizen, you would know that if I'm using ChatGPT, these are the kind of risks I would face. If I'm using Gemini model, this, these are the kind of risks I would face. And even if for sovereign models like for Servam, you would have similar reports issued, and giving opportunity for technology players to actually fix some of these things in a timely manner. In terms of DPI, digital public goods and infrastructure, I would say, and I will include the goods into it because goods are the one which are more open source. Infrastructure, unfortunately, remains slightly more closed with certain protocols which come only in open domain. The major challenge there also lies is the safeguards. We don't have enough safeguards in place. The DPDP Act and the notified rules are playing one level of safeguards, but if you look into other usage related issues which are being reported on ground, there are not enough ways to fix those safeguards. So there is a global discussion which UNDP has begun to have a DPI safeguards framework and also DPI safeguards sort of academy where we teach the government officials and technology builders and in general people who are bridging the technology gap in India and other countries how these safeguards need to be implemented on ground. How do we have enough reporting mechanism from people to issue some of the early warnings they are facing with DPI, and how do we move towards more openness in this? So more proactive disclosure of some of the problems we are facing with DPI, more proactive disclosure on how the data would be retained and then released to third-party stakeholders, etc. So still an emerging conversation, but more consultative and participatory in nature. So that's giving me a bit of a hope there.
Right. So I've been asked by the organizers to also wrap up in time because they need to prepare the room for another event. So we'll just take another set of questions. Please keep them short, and I would also request the experts to keep their answers short. because I know this is a conversation which has to go much longer, but we'll try to give it a closure. So next set of questions, just 3 and very short.
My first question is to Achu that India is a very diverse country when it comes to how people are accessing technology and what amount of people are accessing it. So the thing is that urban population is coping up with technology in a very good way, but we should not forget that the most of the part of India is the rural society, the rural community. So how we are going to cope up with that part of India?
Okay.
My question is, and also because we are talking about leadership, the topic is India's part to global leadership, and leadership cannot be done if we are just lifting a small part of India to a baseline. It is important to lift the whole country to a baseline.
True.
And second question to Gaurav. Gaurav, as you said that that just a second that we are offering users. So this is also my concern because most of the youth is busy asking for emotional support to AI rather than actually developing something new, actually finding some new opportunities. And HCL is one of those companies which offer like a huge opportunity. They hire most of the engineers. I think HCL one of those companies. So I think opportunity is there, but people are not ready to accept because sometimes they say they are offering low salaries or they are not ready to accept what they are getting. We should learn also. We should more focus on learning and adapting technology and then building something new rather than focusing on what they are paying, what is the pay structure and all.
Sure.
So
Any other question? Yeah. Okay. We guys can take just 2, so please just keep it brief, okay? Yeah.
As we know that data is the new gold, so do India need more data centers? As we have seen recently that in ChatGPT there was an Japanese art form and people used it mindlessly and the ChatGPT just broke down. And so as a country like India with 1.4 billion population, do we need more data centers and more if we have more data centers and we are unable to manage the data, what should we do with the data? As we know, it can be used for better purposes, but how would we regulate it? And
More data centers. All right. See, let's just keep the questions in a way that they are able to answer. But anyway, yeah.
Okay, I'll keep it very, very short.
Yes.
Talking about a more deep tech infrastructure, I'd like to steer the conversation towards the semicon industry. Right now, India is like overly reliant on China, given the semiconductor situation. Where do you think currently India stands in the supply chain, the 3 levels of the supply chain, and what is the sweet spot that we should actually target? Is it the midstream one, is it the downstream one, or the upstream one?
Okay, we have one more enthusiastic question. So, was.
Hi, my name is Puneet Prajapati. I'm working with Ministry of External Affairs. I wanted to ask what guidelines we should follow while using ChatGPT in terms of personal data.
Right. Next to you, there's a question. So you can club them together, right? I think that's what you're going to be
hello,
doing.
my name is Rahul. My question is very simple. इंडिया एआई का प्रोड्यूसर बनेगा या कंज्यूमर बनेगा फ्यूचर में? आप लोगों का क्या प्रेडिक्शन है?
Okay, prediction, fine. Okay. The simplest questions are sometimes the hardest to answer, right? I think there's one more. जब इतने लोगों को हम जगह दे रहे हैं, तो let's make it inclusive, right? Yeah, why not? I think he had a question, right? You had a question, did you? No, he didn't have a question. Fine. All right. So we have a whole host of questions. I leave it to both of you to do the division of labor. Whoever wants to come first can come first, but we just need to keep it brief.
I can go first. Might not be able to answer all, but then we have Achyut also. So, data and AI scaling question specifically, I think you asked that. As I was saying in the early remarks also, we need to think from data and AI scaling for all perspective beyond the technology groups, STEM groups. How do we make data and AI scaling work for non-STEM audience? And we have to do it right now. So we have partnered with GIZ, which is the government ministries, external affairs and collaboration perspective, as well as Ministry of Education here, to see what kind of courses we can design on Swayam platform, which is a big news open learning platform, specifically for AI and digital skilling for
decision making for public policy, for anyone who wants to get a refresher course, a microcredit course to understand how they can take data and AI much more uh, in a much more job friendly manner, but also helping them do their major and minor projects. I think that's where I see a lot of potential. If we start turning those early projects into data and AI projects, that's where you are a step closer towards closing the skilling gap. Second one, in terms of data centers and regulation, I think um, there is, and ma'am can allure more about it, there's a lot of investments being done by Government of India, especially National Informatics Center, on providing sovereign cloud infrastructure for other government services as part of Meghraj. We have now Meghraj 2, where we are trying to recruit and empanel even small scale cloud infrastructure providers across India to give some sort of opportunity to get listed on the Government of India cloud grid and provide these services. So I think those kind of innovative models need to be developed to provide cloud scaling within the country. But at the same time, we need to also talk about data minimization. That conversation is also missing from our legislative discussions as well as in the implementation and the life cycle of data till when we need it. All those conversations are slightly missing. So, semiconductor, I'm not an expert. I would see if Achyut can talk about it. Guidelines for ChatGPT, I think very similar conversation which we were having just before. I think uh, there could be certain guidelines in terms of the public use of ChatGPT and use specifically for government services, specifically by auditing the ChatGPT models, especially the newer models on where they see the risks. My personal thing with every technology, we need to have be more mindful about what kind of reliance you are building as an individual, as a community, as a group of people. So I think that thinking needs to be cultivated and more from an awareness perspective. So risk and harm registry, as along with other LLM models, is what we are advocating for, a public list of harms and risk registry. That's it. AI protection, I think we need to be enabler rather than being the developers of AI or the consumers of AI. We need to be the enablers of AI and enablers for us as well as for other global south countries. That's where I see the opportunity.
ये क्वेश्चन ऐसी
हम्म,
है अभी तक 4 बार इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन हो चुका
जी
फर्स्ट सेकंड में तो हम तो गुलाम थे तो उसकी तो बात ही नहीं है थर्ड में हमने पार्टिसिपेट किया डिजिटल में फोर्थ भी क्या
फोर्थ में इनेबल करना है हमें और इनेबल हमारी पॉपुलेशन हमारी नीड्स के लिए करना है, हमारी ज़रूरतों के लिए करना है. दैट्स व्हाट आई वुड से. इट्स नॉट एन ईजी थिंग क्योंकि हमारी ज़रूरतें कभी हमें ही नहीं पता होती हैं कि हमें सबसे ज़्यादा भी टेक्नोलॉजी की कहाँ ज़रूरत है. एज समवन वाज मेंशनिंग, हम लोग अभी भी बेस लाइन तक ही आने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. तो हमारी ज़रूरतें हमें बहुत क्लियर होनी चाहिए और फिर जब हम ये टेक्नोलॉजी ट्रेड्स कर रहे हैं तब वो ज़रूरतें बहुत क्लियरली पॉलिसी में आनी चाहिए. दैट्स द वे आई वुड.
Anyway, Achyut.
Yeah, I think Gaurav has pretty much summed it up. आपका जो कंसर्न था ना उसमें सिंपल सा स्टेटिस्टिक है कि अराउंड लगभग 65% जो हमारे जेन जीज हैं वांट टू एक्चुअली एस्पायर टू बिकम कंटेंट क्रिएटर्स. ये विच इज़ अ गुड पार्ट, विच इज़ अ गुड, दे हैव फिगर्ड आउट कि उनको क्या करना है. राइट, जब हमारे इतना बड़ा पॉपुलेशन है, हमें पता है हमें क्या करना है. सो आई थिंक हम वहाँ तक क्यों सीमित है कि हम खाली उसको यूजेज पे रखेंगे. हम आप हैं, हम हैं, हमारा तो ऑब्जेक्टिव ही यही है कि ये सब कुछ बिल्ड हमें यही करना चाहिए. हमारे लिए पहले हम अपने लिए तो सॉल्व कर ले. 2/3 60% हमारे इंडियन इकोनॉमी डोमेस्टिक डिमांड पे ही चलती है. हमारा सीजन ही इतने अच्छे हैं कि हमारा डिमांड अच्छा हो जाता है. तो आई डोंट मतलब मैं आपका सिंगल आंसर पॉइंट है कि आपने पूछा था वो यूज़र रहेगा या बिल्डर रहेगा. मैं तो कह रहा हूँ हाँ, बिल्डर रहेगा, बिल्कुल रहेगा. जब तक हम जानते हैं कि हमें करना क्या है टेक्नोलॉजी के साथ, ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस बन रही हैं एंड वो प्रोग्रेस चलता रहना चाहिए. So you had a very interesting, you are from the external affairs, so just wanted to add one aspect, because you're using it for your personal uses, right?
Especially, I want to know it for the personal.
Personal, yes, yes. So your data is open, sir. What I would like to just caution you is that the free versions of all of these tools, right? And you will now see more free versions coming into the market, right? They're free because of one clause, which is to use your data. Since it's very sensitive for that matter. When you look at some of the paid versions which are there, although because right now we are at a stage when that's one of the only options sort of which is there, right? So when you look at some of the paid premium models which are there, they have a concept of localized model where your data doesn't go beyond your own control. So that's where maybe you can be much more open to conversing. But the ones which are free are really open. Way just to like हाँ वो तो है ही आपने एक क्वेश्चन पूछा था क्योंकि 2 बार आपने ट्राई किया था तो उसमें सी सबसे ज़्यादा जो आप मोबाइल यूजेज की बात करेंगे वो upcoming mobile usage, upcoming internet usage is actually not fueled from tier 1 cities, it is from the tier 2 cities. अब हो क्या रहा है कि उनके पास जो कंटेंट जा रहा है उसकी क्वालिटी इतनी खराब है कंटेंट की कि we are feeding our farmers, our I would say youth of tier 2 tier 3 cities with junk content which is all that doom scrolling which is there. So डिमांड की कमी नहीं है, इट इज़ अबाउट ये वो क्वालिटी और क्या आप लेके जाना चाहते हो वहाँ पे. सो आई थिंक दैट वाज वन. Semiconductor was a crucial angle, right? See, let's take semiconductor is as similar to how we garnered the space capability. थोड़ा parallels है इसमें. तो एकदम से तो हम चिप नहीं बना पाएंगे या एकदम से तो हम we'll not be leaders. It's always a journey, right? So we're starting from being what are called as fabrication experts or assembly experts. So we're having Delhi NCR's the first I would say OSAT semiconductor assembly plant. It's an HCL Foxconn joint venture in Jewar, very much adjacent to the airport. So that's when fabrication and those capabilities really start in the region. इससे क्या होता है कि एक बार जब आपकी चीज़ें सेटअप होती हैं तो एक इकोसिस्टम बनता है. वो इकोसिस्टम कंसिस्ट ऑफ नॉट जस्ट कंपनीज बट कंपनीज से भी पहले पहले लोगों को एजुकेशन समझ में तो आए. आई एम सो हैप्पी टू recently learn that when I was doing my engineering, nobody used to take electrical engineering. Very few people used to take electrical engineering or subjects related to semiconductors. वो अब change हो रहा है, right? Because they're seeing this ecosystem getting created. So I think it's a bottoms-up approach, fabless assembly towards creating your own chips in the future. But we have to master the full stack. And I think
So Eddie, I'm sure there must be many supplemental questions as always because this is a very absorbing topic. But on that note, let me thank the two of you and also GeoStrata for putting this together because, like I say, that your strength lies in sort of having these meaningful conversations with very youthful energy. Because I myself have been criticizing, don't take it personally, but that Indian foreign policy for that matter, and also sir, you don't take it personally. It's run by men and especially old men. So whenever we see the youngsters taking charge is when I feel very happy, and I personally want to congratulate you for that. Thank you for giving us a 360-degree view. I think in both panels, the first panel as well as the second one, I myself have taken many notes. So I'm sure all of you are also benefited deeply by it. I hope this is one of many conversations that we should be having with different focus points. So thank you once again, Akshat and Gaurav, for really enlightening us with your expertise. And thank you so much for staying here, and thank you for for these very wonderful questions. So from my side, it's a close. I think we all deserve a huge round of applause.
Thank you so much, everyone. I think the biggest takeaway of this session was that we will continue to have convergences. Convergence of AI, convergence of ideas, convergence of policies, and even industry. With that, on behalf of the GeoStrata, I thank all of you with all my heart, including the audience, including the speakers, for all of the insights and perspectives that you brought in. I think we have a lot of questions, but again, thank you to our audience for bringing the time to come to this discussion. And also, it's not just about the offline audience, but also the wider Strata community that is waiting to listen to your insights online. And thank you so much for that. And with that, we officially come close to this event. And I hope you all have questions, and this will be a reason for you to go ahead and discuss and learn more about AI. Thank you.